It's just you and your animal buddy against the world of D&D. Sure, your adventuring party is there in the background, but do they really matter? You've got a pet, after all, and what could possibly be more satisfying than that? Let's have a chat about the Beastmaster Ranger then, shall we? Hi there, I'm just a second level fighter who likes talking about Dungeons and Dragons, and if you value the lives of your pets or animals in general just a little bit more than most of your fellow humans, then consider hitting the subscribe button or leaving a comment or like on the video. But enough about that, because today we're covering the Premier Pet subclass in 5e. So, my previous video was a bit of a rant and moan about the efficacy of permanent pets in D&D, and while I do indeed have my problems, check it out if you are curious, the Beastmaster Ranger is as close to what I would want out of a pet-based character option as the current system can provide. But I'll be honest, it really isn't as disappointing as I made it out to be in the last video. So, the Beastmaster, what is it? Well, it is very simply a stock standard ranger with a beast companion. However, there is a lot of history here, as this is the third iteration of the subclass we've had in this edition of D&D. The designers have struggled specifically a bit with this one. However, in my opinion, the 2024 version is the best it's ever been. Anyway, regardless of what version you play, the Beastmaster has always been an S-tier roleplay option. Having a pet to play around with and cause nonsense is never not amazing. In its current state, though, the Beastmaster is genuinely one of the stronger choices for Ranger, only really falling behind the Horizon Walker in consistent damage potential. Not that that's saying much, but that's a rant for another day. Just know that this is a pretty awesome subclass, and today we're going to give it a fair shake and noodle around with the features and possibilities. I've also included my take at an example 1 to 20 build at the end of the video if you're interested. Okay, let's start out with the single feature that this subclass gets at 3rd level, Primal Companion. Basically, we get the ability to summon a beast to accompany us on our misadventures. However, there are more than a few rules for this thing, and at times it is going to feel somewhat restrictive. So, we can choose from one of 3 stat blocks, those being land, sea, or sky-based options, which we will cover in a bit. Regardless of which we choose here, we can pick the appearance of the beast as long as it is appropriate for the stat block. You want a chicken rat? Go ahead. This isn't technically a real animal though, as no matter what form it takes, the primal companion is covered in markings that show its supernatural nature. It's really more of a spirit beast. Now, it will follow us to the ends of the earth, but if our character is reduced to 0 hit points and expires, then our pet immediately vanishes. However, if it's the pet that expires, we can bring it back in its current form with a magic action and a spell slot of any size, provided we do so within an hour of its tragic demise. Failing that, we can summon another one at the end of a long rest, choosing its stat block in the process. This is also how we can change it to another stat block if we want. Either way, this has no cost attached to it. So yeah, the Primal Companion functions almost exactly like a player character, as it has hit dice and can take rests, and it can also make attack rolls, ability checks, and saving throws. Now, before we touch on the individual stat blocks, we need to understand how the Primal Companion functions in combat, because that's where things get a bit weird. Fair warning, if you have never played a pet-focused subclass in D&D, some of the choices here are a bit odd. Anyway, this thing acts on our turn and not after it or on its own turn, which allows us to use our pet's actions and our own interchangeably. However, the Primal Companion is an extremely good listener and will do whatever we ask it to. But if we don't, then it can only take the dodge action or reactions. This is the frustrating part, because if we mess up and use too much action economy on ourselves, or even if we're in a situation where we have no other choice, then our pet is going to sit and stare at us like we're an idiot. Which is actually kind of some scary realism. We can command it to take any action though, provided we spend our bonus action. We can also replace one of our own attacks made with the attack action to command it to use its Beast Strike, which is its own little attack. Now, very importantly, until we reach a certain level, we cannot use both a bonus action and replace one of our own attacks. The Primal Companion only has a single action of its own and no more. For the same reasons, without some weird shenanigans, we can never command it to use Beast Strike more than once a turn. I do just want to quickly bring up one of the jankiest rules interactions here. If we as the ranger were to use the light weapon property to make an extra attack and then make further use of the Nick weapon mastery on say something like a scimitar to make that extra attack as part of the attack action, well, we could theoretically replace the light weapon attack with our pet's Beast's Strike, which seems properly unintended, but kinda works rules as written. Obviously, this kind of seems like an exploit and should be something we check with our DM before rocking it out in the middle of a game, but this does have its uses at conserving action economy and we'll cover a specific use case later on. Anyway, if we are ever incapacitated, then our pet isn't limited to waiting for orders and can act normally. And just a reminder, the incapacitated condition is actually very common, so watch out for it. One other thing, do not get separated from the primal companion. It can't defend itself while we aren't around. But yeah, the primal companion scales off of our wisdom for its attack and damage rolls and off of our ranger level for its HP. It also gets to add our proficiency bonus to any ability checks or saving throws it makes, which is nice and completely necessary because none of the stat blocks have any remotely decent bonuses. Alright, of the 3 stat block options, the Beast of the Land is going to be our bread and butter. It has a 40-foot speed as well as a 40-foot climbing speed. Like all the options, it has dark vision, 60 feet in this case. Where it differs mostly is its Beast Strike, which deals 1d8 plus 2 plus our Wisdom modifier in bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage. Additionally, if it moves at least 20 feet in a straight line before attacking, then the target takes an extra d6 damage, and if it's large or smaller, it is knocked prone without a save. This makes the Beast of the Land the best damage dealer. The prone component is also really nasty. So, this could be anything you want it to be, but some obvious cosmetic options are a wolf, dog, big cat, boar, badger, or small bear. Personally though, I love the idea of a donkey. The Beast of the Sea is secretly one of the more terrifying options here. It has an abysmal 5-foot speed on land, but also a 40-foot swim speed. Notably, it has 90 feet of dark vision, along with its ability to breathe both air and water. Its Beast Strike is a bit of a head turner though. It deals 1d6 plus 2 plus our Wisdom modifier in bludgeoning or piercing damage. However, if it hits a creature, that creature is immediately grappled, which is awesome. But if we chose for our buddy to be an octopus, they could feasibly grapple up to 8 creatures at once. Yeah, this thing could be a small shark, a dolphin, a really slow giant crab, a giant otter, or of course an octopus. But I like the idea of having a baby manatee. The Beast of the Sky is the most removed from the other 2 stat blocks in terms of raw power and tankiness. Unlike the land and sea, this thing only gets 4 plus 4 times our ranger level in hit points and d6s for hit dice. The other 2 both get 5 plus 5 times our ranger level and d8s for hit dice. It is also small in size while the other 2 are medium, but it has a 10-foot speed and a massive 60-foot flying speed. It also has 60 feet of dark vision and the flyby trait, which means that it doesn't provoke attacks of opportunity when leaving an enemy's reach. Its Beast Strike is nothing special and only deals 1d4 plus 3 plus our Wisdom modifier slashing damage. This is a skirmisher at heart that is probably best used for aerial combat and scouting. Of course, any reasonably sized bird or flying critter will do here. However, I would choose something like a fruit bat because they're basically just flying good boys. Finally, we move on to level 7, where we get exceptional training. This unlocks some serious utility and mobility for our primal companion as it lets us use our bonus action to command them to take the dash, disengage, dodge, or help action. However, they don't use their action for any of this, instead they use their bonus action. This leaves open their action for a Beast Strike, but here we would need to sacrifice an attack to command them to do so. On top of that, whenever our pet deals damage with an attack roll, the damage it deals can be its normal type or force damage. Notably, this isn't limited to Beast Strike, so if there is a way for our pet to make an attack through any other means, then that damage would become force damage, which has some very weird implications. At 11th level, we get a pretty big boost in power for our pet with Bestial Fury. This very simply allows our primal companion to make 2 attacks whenever we command them to use Beast Strike. However, if we are incapacitated and unable to command them, then they are still stuck with a single attack. Additionally, our pet can deal Hunter's Mark damage once per turn when they hit the marked target. So yeah, another strange attempt to make Hunter's Mark a core ranger feature. The little bit of extra damage is nice here, especially if we're using our bonus action to command the pet, because then it is just solidly extra damage. However, Hunter's Mark isn't a good spell, and letting our pet benefit from it won't change that in any way. That being said, allowing our pet to make 2 attacks is what pushes this subclass above most other ranger subclasses in terms of damage potential. Then our capstone at 15th level is Share Spells. This lets our pet gain the benefits of any spell we cast that we target ourselves with, as long as they are within 30 feet of us. On the surface, this sounds amazing, until we realize that the targeting rules for spells in D&D are especially heinous and weirdly implemented. Spells with a range of self don't necessarily qualify, and spells with a range of self and a further qualifier like an emanation never qualify. So rip conjure woodland beings. However, spells where we intentionally damage ourselves like conjure volley do qualify because we become a target of the spell, which is incredibly scuffed and quite frankly stupid. I honestly would have preferred if they scrapped this feature entirely and tried something new. That being said, the spell we cast doesn't necessarily have to be a ranger spell, or even one gotten from a class feature. Magic items work too. But here's a brief list of what I believe are the best ranger spells that synergize with this feature. Almost none of them have the same level of combat power and aerial denial that duplicating conjure woodland beings would have had, but there are some decent options here, I guess. I'm not going to cover all of them, but a Shardlon Stride is especially silly when put on the Beast of the Sky. This spell comes from Fizzbins and grants extra speed and the ability to burn enemies when we move within 5 feet of them. If we tell the flying critter to do a bunch of flybys and then ourselves do a bunch of drive-bys, we can deal a bunch of fire damage with no save. Is it particularly strong? No, but it is funny. However, if we can get access to spells like invisibility or haste, this feature becomes way better. But if it wasn't obvious yet, this feature is genuinely held back by the Ranger spell list itself. I am not a fan. So, having seen all the subclass features, what does the Beastmaster Ranger actually do? Well, despite the fact that the Primal companions on their own aren't tremendously impressive, the Beastmaster does feel like it expresses a superb level of mastery over their beast buddy. It feels like it was designed to take a small or medium-sized beast and push it to its absolute limits within the somewhat logical trappings of a D&D campaign. We haven't touched on specific spells yet, but just know that the pet here is very competent when put into combat, as well as scouting or even infiltration-focused scenarios. On top of that, depending on which primal companion is chosen, success in any environment is all but guaranteed. Even the horrifying proposition of full body submersion in water where the literal rules of the game change is easily overcome by the Beast of the Sea. Now, I am fairly certain that of the 4 subclasses presented in the 2024 PHB, this is the strongest, especially when built with a focus on wisdom, at least when disregarding the concept of multiclassing and the prospect of going full send with a big people opener and great weapon master. In those cases, the Beastmaster does somewhat fall behind, but on average it is way more consistent. The one downside of this subclass is that it is riddled with janky interactions that feel largely unintended. Subbing in the beast's attack for the light weapon attack made using the Nick weapon mastery, exchanging the damage types on all attacks made by the pet for force damage, and of course the god-awful capstone that really highlights the confusion around targeting with spells in D&D. This is not a simple subclass, but it really should have been. However, if you want the best version of a pet-based subclass that 5e has ever had, well, this is it. Anyway, how do we go about building one? Well, we have to start by asking ourselves one very important question. How much do we want the primal companion to shine? The main difference here basically comes down to the thing's accuracy and damage. If we want to invest fully into the pet, then we boost wisdom. If we still want to do cool martial stuff and use a weapon that isn't just a magically supercharged piece of wood, then we pump up dexterity or strength while trying to keep our wisdom at a respectable level. Yes, I am firmly in the camp that Shillelagh is the best way to run a Beastmaster. It may not outdamage a Great Weapon Master build when the stars align, but it doesn't require the ability score and feat investment. It is also much better at using some of the better ranger spells like Conjure Woodland Beings and Steelwind Strike, while still being quite versatile. Anyway, for some actual advice, don't rely on a single primal companion. Try them all out when the chance arises. The Beast of the Sky might not look too impressive, but trust me, it is the best at scouting. The action economy aspect of this subclass is also something that requires a bit of learning. We should always try to make our pet attack as a bonus action, as this allows us to use our own action for attacks or spells. But if we have to use our bonus action for something else, which we will, then we have to weigh up whether sacrificing an attack is worth it or not. This is of course all dependent on weapon selection and what is happening in the situation. Oh, and don't be afraid of or dismissive of Hunter's Mark. In a prolonged combat with some big baddies, it will stack up some pretty decent damage over the course of the fight. Yes, it sucks up concentration and isn't effective into hordes, but it is there, so why not use it? Here's a list of spells that either synergize really well with our Primal Companion or just the theme of a Beastmaster in general. I wouldn't consider any of them an auto-include, but there are a few here that are much more usable on a Beastmaster than any other ranger. Jump, Long Strider, and Pass Without Trace are great for boosting our companion's capabilities in or outside of combat. Beast Sense is amazing for scouting. It basically lets us see through our buddies' eyes as we send them out to survey an area, so best used on the Beast of the Sky. Other rangers have to come across a cooperative beast to do this, but we just happen to permanently have one of those. Then Summon Beast, Fey, and Elemental are all weirdly good options when taken on a wisdom-focused Beastmaster. Each summon doesn't use up our action economy, and they all have some quirks to make them desirable. This is a pet-focused subclass, so let's add another temporary pet. Then Conjure Animals lets us make a huge moving area of effect that is flavored to be a swarm of small beasts. Sounds perfect for a Beastmaster. No half damage on a successful save here, but it is still a good spell. Finally, Dominate Beast is the most thematic option to take for our subclass here. It works on any CR beast, so it has some possibilities, but yeah, beasts aren't generally too amazing comparatively speaking. However, none of that matters because we are a Beastmaster and all beasts should treat us as such. When looking at feats, there aren't really any that stand out as much when compared to other rangers or marshals. However, taking Great Weapon Master or Crossbow Expert, or both, seem to be the best directions for a playstyle that doesn't involve Shillelagh. But if Shillelagh is the path we're heading down, then Inspiring Leader is probably the best option to boost Wisdom. The temporary hit points gained here are just amazing. Shadow Touched gives access to invisibility and another first level illusion or necromancy spell. I recommend Disguise Self here, as once we reach 15th level we can pretend to be the local crazy cat lady and one of her feline children. Telepathic is also a decent choice as it allows for silent command of our primal companion, which has its uses. Then, of course, Mounted Combatant needs a shout out. I haven't mentioned it up until now, but if our character is small, then they can ride the Beast of the Land or Sea by default. Now, we don't get much out of the advantage on attack rolls from this feat, but the rest of the features are pretty good. As for origin feats, taking Magic Initiate to get access to Shillelagh is the better option as this allows us to take the dueling fighting style which gives more damage. However, Musician is also a solid option, as while our primal companion cannot get heroic inspiration, many animals really like listening to music. So it's just a really charming role-playing first kinda choice. Now, with our choice of species, take whatever tickles the pickle best. But there is some weird value in taking a small species like a gnome or halfling. As mentioned, due to their size, they can ride the pets without issue, and that's funny, but also kinda cool. However, while this is a very bonus action starved kind of subclass, two options that have bonus actions worth using are the Kobold and Hobgoblin. Kobolds can ride the Primal Companion and let out a battle squeak for +1 bravery and advantage on all attack rolls for a turn. Hobgoblins can take a bonus action to use the help action, which has some great extra effects that support the pet a little bit too. That being said, the Duergar and Fairy are arguably better choices because they don't eat up our bonus action uses but still add their own value. Duergar can cast invisibility and enlarge or reduce on themselves for free once per long rest. However, they also have the ability to cast them using spell slots in the normal way. That is, if my interpretation of this ability is correct, which it may not be. But these are two pretty awesome spells that work amazingly with a companion. Also at 15th level, we can just share them with the pet with share spells. Fairies also get enlarge or reduce, but aren't limited to casting it on themselves for free. However, this is the only species that can just kinda mount the Beast of the Sky if they reduce their size to tiny. It isn't super useful in this case, but it is amazingly flavorful to have a tiny fae riding a bird into battle. Right, the time has come to build us a Beastmaster. We're going to pick the Duergar species and name our boy Du Ragar, for confusing pronunciation reasons. Also, his buddy is Lenny. He hasn't seen him for a while, but I'm sure he'll show up again around level 3 or so. We'll take a 15 in Wisdom, a 14 in Dexterity, and a 13 in Constitution with the standard array. I don't care about the other 3 ability scores here. Anyway, Du was a guide back in the Underdark, and because of that he gets a +2 to Wisdom, a +1 to Constitution, and the Magic Initiate Origin feat, which he will use to get access to Shillelagh and maybe Guidance and Healing Word. For skills, well, as a Beastmaster I assume Animal Handling is mandatory, so we'll go with that. We'll also pick up Perception and Insight from the Ranger, and Stealth and Survival from our background. Now, to set the scene a bit, Ragar once upon a time caught a glimpse of a pretty heroic looking drow. Was a bit far off and kinda eavesdropping, so he couldn't hear too well, but he gathered that the drow's name was Drizzle, and Drizzle had a pet panther called Gwen. So, our seeing Drizzle with his slick pair of scimitars Icy Beth and Twinkie, vowed to try and be just like him. He renamed his pet bobcat to Lenny because he didn't want to flat out copy that Drizzle guy. He also tried out the scimitar thing but could only scrounge up a single one and had to substitute the other one with a sizable piece of wood. However, upon testing the scimitar, he very quickly realized that he wasn't anywhere near as good with it as that Drizzle guy. So he just started pointing it at things and Lenny would take that as a sign to go ham. What I mean to say with all of that is that with this build we'll be using all the janky nonsense this subclass provides. So yes, we'll take the dueling fighting style and use weapon juggling to pull out a scimitar at the right time to be ready to make a light attack as part of our action with the Nick weapon mastery, only to replace it with our pet's beast strike instead. This is possible because a club which we'll use Shillelagh on also has the light property. My tolerance for exploitation and nonsense is significantly higher when it comes to ranges. Sorry, not sorry. For the feats Duergar will pick up along the way, we'll be taking Inspiring Leader at 4th level to bring his wisdom up to 18. We'll choose Observant at level 8 for another point of wisdom and expertise in perception. With this level of perceptive skills, maybe would have learned some more accurate information about his hero Drizzle. 12th level sees cap out his wisdom with Skill Expert. Here we can take the extra expertise in something like Survival. I will also point out that at this point has expertise in all 5 of his skill proficiencies, which is pretty awesome. For our last regular feat, we'll set Duergar's Constitution to 16 with an ability score increase. As for our epic boon, we're taking the boon of Spell Recall so that there's a chance we don't expend a spell slot of 4th level or lower, which by the way is literally just above 88% of our total spell slots at this point. So yeah, spell slots will be saved here. Is it the best option? Probably not, but on a Ranger, Paladin, Artificer, Eldritch Knight, or Arcane Trickster, it is pretty amazing. Okay, that's the build for Duergar the Duergar, the Drizzle wannabe, and his pet bobcat Lenny, who can also become a fruit bat or giant cuttlefish. He's just kinda weird like that. Alright, that was the Beastmaster Ranger. Honestly, it's a pretty decent ranger with a lot of flavor, but what do you think? Anyway, if you've made it this far into the video, then you're a legend and I really do appreciate you. Now, I've seen this idea floated around before, but also in a few comments recently. Instead of Hunter's Mark, should Rangers just have a Beast Companion as a core class feature? And what would that even look like, and would each subclass be able to add something to that? But yeah, that'll do it for this one. Cheers.